Well, I just have no clue what I'm doing. And as life goes on, Erik, I realize that nobody seems to have any clue what they're doing, and that's the game of life.
Is it though?
I think so. At least that makes me feel comfortable knowing that nobody has it figured out. And sometimes we look ahead at the people who we think are doing what we want to be doing or where we want to be, and we're like, they got it all figured out. Do you have it all figured out?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Sure I do.
All right. Well, we'll discuss all that and more right here, right now. PodMAX Podcast.
Welcome to the PodMAX Podcast.
I fear I made a big mistake.
Uh-oh.
By that admission, right? You didn't seem to really agree with what I was saying, but let me tell you where I got this from. I'm currently listening on Audible to Russell Brand. You love Russell Brand. You know what he's up to. You know his full scope of what he does.
I know his accent and his brand of humor, but yeah.
Right. You know him as an actor, Finding Sarah Marshall, Get Him to the Greek, right?
Yeah.
He's written a few books, all talking about his addiction and road to recovery. If you follow him on social, on Facebook, he is extremely spiritual and quite intelligent. And I just really vibe with his thought of things. And he came out with a new book. It's actually Audible exclusive, so it's not even in print form. He created this partnership with Audible where he created this book. It's called Revelation, and it's just an Audible book. And I'm listening to it, and it gave me that sense of realization that we think everyone else has everything figured out, but even our heroes, those that we look up to, they don't know what they're doing half of the time. They're just making it up as they go along.
I love this. This is great because this was not planned, folks. You know, we have some sort of plan behind the scenes here, but speaking of giants, speaking of people we look up to, this is going right into our segment in Pro in the Know because we look up to this giant, and we'll get into it right in this segment called Pro in the Know.
Pro in the Know.
What's cool about everything you were saying, Josh, and obviously we're going to recommend and link whatever we need to link to Russell Brand and his audio exclusive. Now I'm going to have to listen to that, like Green Lights, your other recommend. Good stuff. But so we look up to Apple. I know I do. They changed my life. Steve Jobs changed my life. And they created something that we're all using and we're all appreciating and maybe not so much appreciating, but we leverage this tool. We leverage this industry called the podcast industry. And yesterday they announced something big in their world, maybe not so much in the podcast industry because other people are sort of ahead of them for some strange reason. They've created it. It's been 15 years since they created podcasts and they don't own the space. They do. It's debatable. But here's what I want to say. An article released, Apple sent a press release that says, and I'll just read a few sentences here. Apple leads the next chapter of podcasting with Apple Podcast subscriptions. Major updates to Apple Podcasts make discovering and enjoying podcasts better than ever before. Apple today unveils subscriptions, a global marketplace for listeners to discover premium subscriptions offered by their favorite creators alongside millions of free shows on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes. So, Josh, what does that mean? So starting May 1st, 2021, they are going to be available in 170 countries, offering this premium subscription model that will offer us curated content by creators, ad-free listening, access to additional content, and early or exclusive access to a new series that's launching. So what do you make of this, Josh?
Well, I'm not sure. There are so many questions, right? A, what is the price point? How much? I wonder how it's going to be embraced. But from a podcast host point of view, is there, what's it based on? I wonder. And I'm sure those answers aren't easily accessible, sort of like the Google algorithm, right? Like everyone wants to figure out, how do I show up high in those search results? Is this going to be a similar deal where it's like, as a content creator, as a show host, what can I do, if anything, to get on their good list? What is it based on?
Yeah, that is always some sort of hack that people in our industry are always trying to figure out. It's always changing, whatever that algorithm is, whatever the things that we can do or control on our end in order to be featured, to be someone within a certain genre that's highlighted on Apple Podcasts and on their main page.
Like new and noteworthy was a thing.
Exactly. So I think that this is going to change things a bit. The challenge I have with Apple is I want them to do I want them to lead in the industry that they've created, and they do in certain aspects. I think Spotify just passed them in terms of how many listeners use their platform. So here, I'll read this. For the first time, this is from eMarketer. For the first time, Spotify's U.S. podcast listenership will overtake Apple Podcasts, according to eMarketer. This year, 28.2 million people will listen to podcasts on Spotify monthly, while Apple is 28 million. So they just lost their share in the game they created. And I'm rooting for Apple and I'm rooting for Spotify. I mean, competition's good. But as Josh mentioned, it's always a challenge as a creator for us to understand how. I mean, we don't want to hack. We want to earn what we get, right? I don't want to cut corners. I don't want to cheat the system, but I do want to be discovered. And I'm hoping that this and Apple and what they're creating, they're figuring out the biggest pain point in the podcast industry is discoverability. Is it not, Josh?
Yeah. And now, as an Android user, I love my Google Pixel phone for several years now. I don't have the ability for Apple Podcasts on my phone. I don't have that built in. I have the Google Podcast app, which there's so much irony that in these conversations, we rarely talk about Google Podcasts. I mean, they are a search engine, and yet they're not really, I don't know if they're not dedicating time to that, or maybe they are or will, but Spotify is certainly doing their thing. So that's where I find myself. If I hear of someone's podcast and they link to Apple, I'm like, great, now I got to look it up either on Spotify or the Google app. So yeah.
Yeah, so more to come. Apple didn't release a ton of details. We got a ton of questions. So just know that Apple is finally paying attention to the creation that they've kicked off 15 years ago. And they understand and appreciate that what the creators are doing and what the listenerships have grown into, that it's a place that they need to start, putting money and time and energy and R&D into, research and development. So this is all good. Spotify's been, staking their claim, and it's only a matter of time. I knew it would be only a matter of time until Apple stepped up to the plate and said, yeah, we're gonna come back in here and Godzilla versus Kong type of stuff here. So this is gonna be fun to watch.
And it's going to continue as the days and the months go on. There's going to be a lot of push and pull, give and take, trying of things and seeing what works. And as long as we could, as creators, keep our eye and ears on the pulse, we'll continue to do what makes the most sense, because there are so many avenues and outlets as content creators that you need to be focusing on. Erik and I were a guest yesterday together on Kathy Sharp Ross's show, and we were talking about this very thing, about just the different avenues of where the industry is going and what it means to business owners and brands and corporations and solo entrepreneurs. And across the board right now, everybody would benefit from having a show. But then Kathy brought up the question, where is the ROI, or how do you make sense of it all? There are just so many moving parts to bringing a podcast to your brand and getting it out. Yeah,
absolutely. So stay tuned. Apple's here and they're here to stay, and we're here to watch. And as Josh said, we want to know what's in it for us as creators. I know they're catering heavily towards the listeners and that community, obviously much, much bigger. But they need to also give us the tools in order to succeed and continue supporting this industry. So, yeah, let's move on.
There you go.
Build it and they will come. Let's do it.
Build it, and they will come.
This past Friday, we had our 12th PodMAX main event, and it was a success on many levels, personal, for the business, for the individuals. I'm guessing for Erik too, who went through as a guest. Larry Roberts was in the co-hosting seat with me for the day. Erik, let's start there for a minute. What was it like? What was the difference? What was the takeaway? We knew going into it that you're going to experience it from the guest point of view, sort of like an undercover boss getting some intel, bringing it back to the base. What have we learned?
In a nutshell, I get the hype. I understand the love and attention that it's getting. Although I said, I'm coming at it from a different perspective because I know what's going on behind the scenes. I know the team. I know what it takes. So I appreciate a lot more than most. But I also see the things that other people don't notice, the cracks, that aren't gaping holes, which thankfully. But it was awesome to come in as a guest. It was great to get the emails. It was great to sort of be in front of the scenes to see what it looks like from a client's perspective and journey. So I loved how the team communicated with me prior days, weeks before, sharing my schedule and seeing who I'm going to be having conversations with, the podcasts that I was going to guest on, having to research those guests prior to the event. To be honest, I was nervous. I was a little nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how the conversations were going to go. I would research, I'd listen, I'd watch their other content. The podcasters reached out to me, which was fantastic. Hey, looking forward to having the conversation. How can I help you? So it's great to see the community as it grows, and even the new people coming into the fold. These were people that I had never met before. I assumed that I would be on podcasts, from people that I know and love already. No, these were all brand new podcasters. So that was probably a little bit of the nerves, but it was really cool to see them sort of have strings of our DNA. It was cool. They're like, how can I serve? How can I best, tell your story? So they got it. I don't know if they just came in with that or if we fostered that through communications and forms and all the stuff that we do with them. So yeah, that was pretty interesting.
It is interesting because are you finding that from the entrepreneur business owner point of view, is it like a no-brainer for any entrepreneur to, as much as they can, as any way they can, to experience the product and service from the client's point of view?
Yeah, I think any business owner is going to benefit depending on their goals. So we all have different goals. We're all in different stages of our life and business. So this one in particular was pretty cool because for me, I'm modifying and tweaking my main story. Josh and I work together. It's funny because, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. Josh and I don't. We coach everyone on their story and getting clear on their message, but we don't often review and rehearse to each other. So we took that time out one day and he gave me amazing feedback. I went back, I started to revisit and take notes and scratch things out and put things in. And I got to test drive it. So that's the cool thing. Like if you're someone that's told their story multiple times and you want to do it live and test it out and see, how does this play? Well, I realized this was a really cool work in progress sort of playground for me because first episode, second episode, third episode, it got better and better and better. My story got tighter and tighter, and I started to figure things out as I went along because it was new to me. Maybe I sort of did it subconsciously because I wanted it to be new and I wanted it to feel exciting. But yeah, that's one avenue and one benefit that I did not foresee.
There's the part that I love is you just spoke about 1, 2, and 3 episodes, obviously talking about during the course of our PodMAX event day, which flies by the way. I always feel the need to reiterate that because on paper, we have an 8-hour agenda virtually. And that could be a little daunting, but 100% of the time, everybody in the room says the day just flies by because we continue to figure out how to hone, nurture, and improve every minute of each hour to make it feel that way. So, one of the things I love getting the feedback from the guests is that they're booked on 3 shows that we facilitate and help you record on 3 different shows during the day. And I started hearing recently that some of the guests go into it thinking that, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to wind up telling back to back to back the same stories, having the same discussion. Rarely is somebody on, first of all, on 3 shows, like out in the wild during your day to day. It's probably rare that you're going to be a guest on 3 shows in one day. 2 is probably more likely, but still few and far between, uncommon. I was actually a guest yesterday on 2 shows, which is pretty cool and interesting. But 3 shows, your impression might be like, "Well, I'm just gonna have the same conversation." But right, Eric? Just it's one of the things I love about the industry is that you're talking to a different person, yet you're the same person, but you're having just a different conversation.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the first analogy that comes to mind is like I'm on the sidelines and, a Daytona 500 car picks me up. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to give you a little race around the track, sit in the passenger seat. Well, there's no passenger seats in those type of cars, but you go around, you experience something. It's a different driver. It's a different type of car. It's a different type of track. And then you get out and then you go to another one. There's a monster truck that comes along. It's like, hey, get on in, man. We're going to hit we're going to hit the track and and you're like, whoa, this feels totally different. I mean, I'm in a car. I'm still moving along. I'm having a conversation, having fun, enjoying the scenery. But yeah, every single person has a different personality, a different cadence, a different vibe to their show. And you never even know really what to expect. Even if you listen to the shows,
Mm.
you know, the differences from the shows that you're listening to in your research to being on, the major difference is you're on it. So you have a major influence on what's happening. So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. And the conversations just flow. Like everyone that comes in, I don't know if it's just the industry itself or we just select amazing podcasters, but it's never difficult. It's always fun and everyone learns, from both sides. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Speaking of learning, one of the things that we implemented a few events ago on that note is empowering the hosts with a guest feedback form. It's a handful of general questions that the hosts fill out after they interview the guest, giving them feedback, honest, relevant, tangible feedback on what worked, what sounded great, what did you take away from it? What can the guest improve on? What should they continue doing? What adjustments would you make? And then we pass those along to the guests on their behalf. And how often are you really able to get that kind of legitimate, tangible, honest, open feedback from your podcast interviews? I don't think often.
If ever.
Yeah.
I've never been on a show where they gave me feedback. They're like,
Opposed to like, yeah, it was great. Great job, man. Talk to you
yeah,
later.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it would be a crime if we didn't mention the amazing keynotes that we have. Matt and Joe from Hustle and Flowchart always bring it. I mean, just a fire hose of information and just value that they bring to our community. I mean, they crushed it and just talked about, amazing things that everybody was just like, blowing up our chat as usual. And then, of course, we had John David Mann, the co-author of The Go Giver. I mean, I was riveted. I was literally at the edge of my seat the entire time. We didn't necessarily dive into Go Giver, which I've read multiple times, but we talked about his new book, which is learn how to, what's it called, Josh?
How to write, right.
How to write
good, or at least gooder.
Gooder, yeah. And that was a great deep dive for anyone who's thinking about writing a book, writes books. Like he gave us some insight into how it works from his perspective and collaborating with other writers. It was gold. But I want to talk about a man by the name of In Q. Yes, his name is In Q. And this guy, let's go right into our next segment and let's discuss In Q.
Have you ever?
So InQ came to us wonderfully from our friend and colleague, Kathy Sharp Ross, who InQ is a keynote speaker and he's a spoken word poet, right? Fantastic, brilliant guy. We trusted Kathy because we're always looking for a keynote. We trusted Kathy, and funny enough, he trusted Kathy. So we said, Kathy, who do you know? She said, InQ would probably be best for this spot. And we said, who? Fine, make it happen. That sounds great. So she says, let me reach out to him. And on the same note, she basically said, hey, InQ, I know these guys, they have this event. It's called PodMAX. It's something you should do. So I trusted Kathy. He trusted Kathy, not really knowing much about the event, but based on her words and her recommendations said, it'll be good for you. You're going to want to do this. And she connected us and he did it. He wound up coming through because I had an open co-host seat. Larry Roberts led that interview with InQ. Erik?
So the question here, and I'll ask it, is usually your question, but Josh, have you ever interviewed a guest that caused a little bit of tension throughout the interview?
That is the question. Whether you're a host or a guest, has there ever been tension between you and your partner on the other side of the mic? Personally, I can't remember a time, except last Friday. Now, in full disclosure, Larry Roberts, we all spoke about this. We have all grown from it. There was nothing, quote unquote, wrong or detrimental about what happened. There's no long lasting effects. In fact, InQ got back to us and adored his time. But there was known, aware, for some reason, tension in the dialogue and conversation that happened. Now, this was taking place live in front of 40, 50 people in the room. So it wasn't your standard podcast interview, although it was set up like one with the added benefit of, so what do you do? What can you do? What should you do? What did we experience there, Erik?
I have experienced tense interviews. I have experienced someone talking about something that I didn't necessarily want to talk about. It's only happened on rare occasions. One instance, I do remember it heavily being edited, or we just didn't air it. So those were our solutions. I never turned the mic off. I never ended the interview. I know friends of mine who have stopped the interview cold and said, this isn't working. I apologize. Nice meeting you, but I don't think this fits the brand and the voice of our show. So that has happened. I've heard that happen. I have never personally done that. Now, the big difference, as you pointed out, with the situation at PodMAX, and I welcomed this as a spectator. I'm a big Howard Stern fan, and I love tension, especially live tension. I mean, who doesn't? And that was not a part of the PodMAX experience ever before. It's always roses and unicorns and love. And I thought this was interesting because I was like, this is different. This feels weird, but not in a bad way. There was a little bit of conflict, and that's a strong word. It was really taking a deeper dive, I felt, and personally from a viewer, into Larry Roberts. Now, I know our team talked about it, and it was more on the other side that, maybe InQ was out of line. Who knows? It depends on who the individual, everyone filters information differently. So I saw something where InQ is questioning certain topics or words that Larry was using. I mean, he's a poet, right? His words are his ammunition. And Larry was, for me, it felt like he was learning. Like he was like, no, tell me the answer because I need to know. Larry Roberts needs to know. How do I get on this spiritual journey? And that's how I was taking it. So I was like with Larry and InQ and waiting and hoping for the wall to break so that there was an aha moment for someone. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, after the event, again, this is not ever outside of Larry's ear. We've spoken to Larry, and he shared, and we all spoke about it intently um, several times after the event, including right after the event. We usually debrief as a team for 20 or 30 minutes, and 20 or 30 of those minutes was just about the in queue moment. So think about that. One could say what they want about InQ and the way he handled it. Should he? Shouldn't he? Did he? Didn't he? What was up? What was down? What's the difference? But we're talking about him.
And we're still talking about it. Mission accomplished. I mean, he dominated our thoughts after the event. Our team, as usually we huddle and we figure things out and we try to correct what's wrong and fix what's needs fixing, or double down on what's working. We spent the majority of the time, as Josh said, talking about this conversation that Larry had with InQ, and it's continuing. Here we are, almost a week later, still talking about it. So, good or bad, I mean, there's something that needs to be paid attention to. The fact that InQ stepped up as his full self. And the thing is, what is your full self, right? We can go deep. We can go meta on this. I'm different every day. I document through audio. I don't journal. I speak it just faster. It works for me. And when I journal or do my audio journal in the morning versus at the end of the day, and I listen back, two totally different people, completely different person having the conversation with myself. So who knows who we were visiting in the middle of InQ's day. I'm sure he would have been different at 9 a.m. that day, different at 5 p.m. that day.
I'm not sure about that. What I think, I mean, yeah, possibly, but I think the thing that would have maintained, that did maintain, that we spoke about, we were like, wow, what was happening there? Unearthing it, InQ was simply honest AF, right? He was so honest with himself, with who he is, with his beliefs. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He was, I mean, magnificently brilliant in his skill, talent, and ability as a spoken word poet. That's clear. And just in his dialogue, he was just true to himself. And it's mind-boggling that he is and has accomplished, like you pointed out, exactly what anybody wants. What does Gary V talk about? What's currency? Attention, period. Get attention any which way, right? Hollywood coined for 100 years already. There's no such thing as bad press or publicity. We're still talking about InQ. So every single person listening is like, I got to look up this guy.
Yeah.
I got to listen to this interview. I got to find out what I don't know. We are mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone who's come through PodMAX, I'm not sure if you have access to this, but it is in our vault. It is accessible to those who were in the room who wants to rewatch, review. But yeah, it is not open to the public. You have to come through PodMAX. So that's how it works. But yeah, it was good stuff. I for the first time felt like an audience member in a stadium when he was performing. So that was pretty cool. And I appreciated his talent very much. I'm not a poet, Def Jam poetry was like my closest sort of experience to that on television, but I never really experienced it live before. And yeah, I enjoyed it. So with all that, yeah, InQ, we got a lot of stock in InQ here. And but let's recap what happened today. We talked about Pro in the Know segment, how Apple finally stepping up to the plate and creating a podcast subscription service with curated content, ad-free listening, access to additional content, and access to a series or exclusive series first. And then we talked about how
build it and they will come.
Yeah.
We were talking about our PodMAX event and Erik going through from the client side and what you could learn, how important that is, what it means, and just how to keep everything you're doing flowing smoothly as an entrepreneur and business person.
And then we segued into Have You Ever? And yeah, we talked about, have you ever had a guest that created some tension, or as we were playfully talking behind the scenes about it, as fun tension. So I don't know where that came from. We thought InQ said it, but I don't think he did. It just sort of came to be. But yeah, have you ever had a guest that caused a little tension during the interview, and how did you handle it? So yeah.
Before we move on to the final approach, descending approach here, I want to get into the comments. And Mitch Slater, always good. I'm so glad we're now connected. You're in our world. There's so much I know where we're going to see and do together. You brought up Howard Stern, and he wrote, I was Howard's intern at DC 101 in 1981. Oh, the stories. I'm sure some of the things that you experienced firsthand, we only saw through the movie Private Parts, right? I can imagine. But he was the master at this kind of entertainment, right? Which, love him or hate him, we all need elements of.
I mean, he created the term shock jock, right? WNBC. I mean, yeah, it's fabulous. I mean, he's the godfather of all things audio and radio to me. So yeah, good stuff.
Oh, look at that. I was there the day Robin first showed
history.
Like in the movie. Again, we only know from the movie where she showed up and he just started having those
a conversation with her.
Putting her on the spot and coaxing her through it, right?
She was there to do the weather, right?
Yeah, become a better interviewer. Exactly. Traffic and weather, maybe. Wow.
Amazing. Good stuff, Mitch. We got to get you on the show and we got to talk all things Howard. That'd be fun. But yeah, folks, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Before we part, obviously subscribe, find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, all the wonderful platforms that you know and love. And then also stay tuned and subscribe to On Air Brands podcast. And we're going to bring the hosts up to tell us what the heck's to expect.
It's Todd Genitacio, Amber Furman, the host of the On Air Brands live show.
Team Larry all day. Team Larry all day.
Oh, look, the three of us have OAB shirts on. Sorry, Amber, we got to get you feeling a little bit.
You clearly do. I feel a little left out here.
We'll take care of you.
That's amazing.
I love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, talk to us.
Well, speaking of tension, everyone is a super fan of Simon Sinek's Start With Why, right? Everybody loves this. I personally think it's bull.
Ooh, wow, the language.
And today, Amber and I are going to dive into what makes a good why and how and when to use different types of whys. And she actually has why on the no list for some of the stuff that she does. So that's the stuff we're talking about today on the On Air Brand Show, onairbrands.com/show for everybody to come over and check out the episode today.
What does that mean? Amber's got something on the no list.
The word why.
I mean, my no list, right? Yeah. No. Here's the thing, and we'll dig into this more in the episode, but I did a podcast episode about a year ago about why I eliminated the word why from the majority of my vocabulary. And I actually mentioned Simon Sinek in that because I absolutely love his concept. And from an NLP standpoint, the language fails. And, part of the reason for that is we ask why and we start looking for stories. And then your mind starts making stuff up instead of really answering the questions that you need to have answered. You end up wondering whether the answers you're giving yourself are real or not.
But before we dive in too deep, we're saving that for the show. So guys, check us out over there. But having a strong why is definitely the key to growing a successful podcast or show of any kind and a successful business. So that's what we're going to be unraveling. And Amber's got the master science behind all that stuff too.
Do we know the episode number for anyone listening to this show?
It will be season 3, episode 3.
Love it. And then hopefully we'll put that link, or as Rob says, John, into the show notes.
And anybody tuning in, the very next PodMAX, I know we try to keep these evergreen, but we have to mention, go to podmax.co for the next date on the calendar. If you want to experience the tension that is PodMAX. It's the tension episode, right?
I also want to put something out there that I can't believe we've gone. I'm not keeping track how many episodes we're in here, which episode this is. Bad on me. But we never give this away, and we have to start putting this in. Go to masterclass at the end of podmax.co/masterclass for some free goodies.
The way people usually say it is go to podmax.co/masterclass.
Thank you.
Instead of go to masterclass at the end of podmax.co.
There you go. All of that, everything I said in a URL. But yes, podmax.co/masterclass. That is our free content for you to clarify your message and jump into the 4 C's, which I'll put myself on the spot. That is clarity, right? Community, connection, and collaboration. So if you want to know more about that and how you do it, go into podmax.co/masterclass or just masterclass and at the end of podmax.co, whichever works for you.
And inquiring minds want to know for us people who missed out on PodMAX this last Friday and feel awful. Like I felt like I was having the shakes the entire time because it's the first one I've missed in the virtual setting. When is the next PodMAX so that I can make that happen?
June 11.
June 11. Yeah.
June 1.
Right.
Block your calendar.
So if you go to .co after you type PodMax, you'll get the info for that, or just go to podmax.co.
I love it.
Don't make it that easy.
Do you guys think that is PodMAX an appropriate reason to tell a judge I can't be in court? I think it is. I think, I should be able to say, like, I can't do this, guys. Sorry, there's more important things. We got to move this.
We have had someone attend PodMAX from a wedding, I believe, right? And someone was at a wedding and was on the call still. So I see no reason we can't jump into the courtroom as well.
I like it.
On the show.
If I got to be here, so do Josh and Erik. So yeah.
That would be amazing. Getting a judge on a show. That would be fantastic.
Your Honor. Can it be Fred Quinn? Can it be Fred Quinn?
Oh, God. Fred Quinn. I know. Two Utes.
The Utes.
What
we
did
should
you
have
say?
a whole show.
You guys, I had to watch that movie the other day just because of our conversation. Honestly, I couldn't get it out of my head, and it is just as good as I ever remember.
Yeah, it does hold up. I was going to say we should have Amber on a show where we just have her from the attorney's side break down how she feels about My Cousin Vinny.
I love My Cousin Vinny. That would be a very boring episode because it would just be a love fest.
Yeah, we could do that.
My Cousin Vinny isn't it the reason why you became a lawyer, Amber?
No, it is definitely not, but I'm sure Joe Pesci would like it to be. No, I found it after I decided to go to law school, but I probably watched it before, but
he's Josh. He's one of your neighbors down there, isn't he? Over by
I was going to say he's in Jersey somewhere, of course.
I think he might be in your town.
Near Bon Jovi, I think.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's certainly in Monmouth County somewhere, right? Yeah. Hello, Monmouth County.
Yeah. All right. And everyone, this was officially our Off the Rails segment.
Yes.
Just remember, go to .co and then masterclass, but remember to put in PodMAX in the dot.
All I know for the past 3 minutes, I keep looking out of the window saying, when are they going to land this bird? We're circling Newark Airport over and over.
It's my favorite part of the plane ride. My absolute favorite part of the plane ride.
Normally I frown upon people clapping when the plane lands, but I think for today we need to do it. So.
Are you one of those? Who's one of those? Please say in the comments.
Back. People clap now. We're bringing it back.
Yes, and it's
today,
amazing
because this was a crash landing, so I think it's worth an applause.
Yeah, it's amazing that website is scrolling on the bottom of the screen because I'm sure that nobody has any idea what we've said for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Love it, folks. So you have tuned in and you have appreciated and loved the PodMAX podcast. And now make sure you go right into the On Air Brands podcast with Todd and Amber. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we hope we added some value in your life today. We'll speak to you next week.
Welcome to the PodMAX podcast.